Okay. Well, we'd like to start by just having you introduce yourself and then give us a little bit of your personal history, where you were born, where you grew up, and where you went to school.
Well, I was born in Franklin County, Kentucky, December the 2nd, 1921. I grew up in Frankfort and in a little village outside of Frankfort known as Bridgeport. I went to Georgetown College for a year and then to the University of Kentucky and got my law degree at the University of Kentucky in 1943.
Well, what attracted you to the law profession? Why did you decide to become an attorney?
I'm not really sure. I did not know. I think because I had read about lawyers, I did not at the time I selected it know a lawyer personally at all. It's just something I thought I would like to do.
And you attended the University of Kentucky Law School. What are your memories of law school? Any professors that stand out? How large was your class?
Well, about all of them stand out because we had so few. We knew them a lot better than we do now. Dean Evans was quite a figure in the law school. Of course, he was dean here, but he was known throughout. He had his major, I guess you would say, was in estates and things like that, and he was very well known in that field all over. And we had I'm trying to think of his first name, Frank Randall, but they called him Pop. We had two. We had Roy Moreland, who'd written quite a bit in the criminal field, and trying to think, we had Judge Eblin was on the faculty at the time, Mr. Pittman. And we had a visiting professor of Mr. Moreland, and I can't think of anyone else like that now, but there were not nearly as many law professors as they have now. And Frank Murray, I forgot him. Think about these as we go along, but they were very accessible, and the student body was not large. When I started to law school, there were about 50 in the first year class, and of course that was during World War II, and when I graduated there were 13. Mm-hmm. Many of those men came back and finished law school, but their education was interrupted by World War II. Many of them were in ROTC. They got called first. There were several who were killed, and of course very sad time for us.
Were there other women in your class when you started?
There was, at that time, you could start in the middle of the year. I don't know whether that's still possible or not. There was one woman who'd been there for a semester, but every other semester we were in the same class. And there was one other woman who started at the same time I did. There was one who was 1 year ahead of us. And when I graduated, there was one 2 years behind us, but 4 was the most we ever had at one time in the entire 3-year classes.
And then when you graduated, did you start your practice here in Lexington, or did you work someplace?
No, I worked for the Department of Revenue in Frankfort.
Mm-hmm. And how long were you there?
About a year. And then I went to the federal government and worked for the Veterans Administration for about 3 years here in Lexington. And I quit at that time. When I say I quit, I stopped. My husband also worked at the VA, and he began private practice. And I was out for about 6 years when my children were little.
And then did you go into practice with your husband? Or?
Uh-huh.
Oh, so you practiced in Lexington since 1940?
Well, no, it's kind of hard to say, to put a year to it. I guess I came to Lexington in about 1944 when I went to work for the VA. I worked for the first, when I got out of school in about 43 to 44. I worked in Frankfurt, and then I came to the VA, and then I helped him all the time that I was here, but I wasn't practicing all the time. Mainly I kept the books and did some tax work and things like that at home when my children were little.
What are some of your early memories of being in the law profession, or did you have any cases that were in the courtroom, or what was your primary practice?
I primarily worked in the probate field and in the real property field, titles and things of that nature. And I really have done very little courtroom work. The only things I've had have been some will contests and things of that nature, but not the well, for instance, in the negligence field, any of that type work, I have not done it. My husband did all that.
What are your memories of the legal community in Lexington when you were first practicing here?
Well, you must remember the war was going on then, and there were very few. There were a lot of lawyers practicing, but also a lot of them were gone. And the main thing I think of is that you knew them better. The courthouse was right in the center, and all of the law offices generally were in the bank buildings surrounding the square. I call it a square. And you'd see them on the street. You were better acquainted. The community itself was closer together.
Yeah. Easier to know everyone. Did you have any experiences with the Fayette County Bar Association? Were you a member of the Bar Association?
Well, not I'm always a member of the Bar Association.
Well, yes.
But I did not take an active part. I had all I could do with a home and 2 children and my husband. And of course, we started out by ourselves, and I wouldn't advise that anymore. I think it would be much harder to do.
Were you aware of any pro bono work, or did you and your husband do any pro bono work in your
He
practice?
did a great deal, but since I was not in that the general practice, I didn't do as much. I have done several cases for like change of name, and I've done some divorce work, but not recently. I haven't done it for a long time.
What are your memories of how attorneys treated each other? I mean, you've talked about the smaller legal community, but what are your memories of how attorneys interacted with each other when
well, I think I would say they were closer together, and you had an opportunity to be friends with more of them now. And I was telling my sons this morning, they don't even remember the circular stairway in the courthouse, but they'd have motion hour and then go out and chat and smoke at that time, hanging over the rail on the floors. And they were, I think, very congenial in most instances.
Who were some of the leading figures in the law during those years of the 40s and the 50s that you recall? Anybody that stands out in your mind?
Well, one that I remember, James Park. He then became a judge here, and Weldon Schaus, Dick Bush. I knew a lot of them because they were classmates of Elwood's. And I'm trying to think of, I remember King Swope. He was very colorful. And several of the men who were older, even in that time. I'm trying to think that's hard for me to remember.
Are there any memories you have of the law firms? I know now we seem to have a lot of large law firms, but what were some of the prominent law firms that you recall?
Well, Stahl Keenan was, of course, here, and I'm not sure about the Garvis Kincaid's firm was right across the street. We could look in their office. Mike Maloney's father, and I'm not sure how that firm was titled now. He was a prominent one, and then hadn't thought about that. The Harbison, it was a Harbison firm. I'm not sure about how the names.
Well, yeah, even now it seems like the names change.
Yeah, well,
so frequently.
Mr. Harbison was quite a fine gentleman, and Nathan Elliott and Dick Bush were in that firm at the time. Rufus Lyle, he was a prominent lawyer, and I forgot to name John Davis. He was at Stahl Keenan. My husband always thought he was the best lawyer in Lexington.
What was the work environment like when you were practicing in those years? How many hours a day? How did people dress? Has that changed
Well, they
a whole
dressed
lot?
more formally than they do now. There was not much casual dress. And I would say suits for women and men were the prominent dress. We had a lawyer, we had a law school professor, Professor Roberts, who came from Harvard, and one of his favorite sayings was telling the boys when they were in law school, if you want to be a lawyer, you've got to act like one and you've got to dress like one. He believed that they should be set apart. But that situation has blended until it's no longer distinguishable, I'm afraid.
What changes have occurred in the law during your practice? And have there been changes that have affected your practice? Any kind of...
Well, the different fields of law have changed a great deal. When I started practicing, we were under the IRS Code of 1939. Well, that has changed dramatically. We've had a dramatic change in bankruptcy law. The insurance law, and of course, no fault was not even heard of at that time. Even the corporation law has changed. And of course, one of the big factors is the no-fault divorce has changed since then.
Those are all big changes.
And, yeah, I always say they repealed everything that I learned in law school and started over again. But there have been tremendous strides in all of them, but in those they've been, I think, maybe more dramatic.
Do you think this is for better or for worse, or do you think it makes any difference what we think?
Well, I think the biggest thing you have to think of here is the change in the whole legal profession over 60 years, you see. That's been a long time, because I started 64 years ago. And the lawyers were held, I think, in higher repute at that time. You were proud to be a lawyer, and now they blame everything on the lawyers. Everything bad that happens, it's the lawyers that are doing it. There's so many more, too, than there were at that time.
How were attorneys disciplined when you first started practicing. Has that changed over the years?
I don't know. That's something I don't know. We did not hear about it. Now, there may have been quite a few complaints to the Bar Association, but it was not, there was definitely not as much. And I think it was not publicized.
That's true. Do you have any advice that you would give to a young attorney starting out?
That would be hard to do. The main thing that I think I would say is they would probably be well to join with someone or some two or three. It is almost impossible to know everything you need to know. And if even if you limit your practice to a certain field, there's so many interconnecting things, like for procedure and things of that nature, that run all through it. You have to know an awful lot, and there are more changes, and it's more difficult to keep up with what's happening.
Is there anything you would do differently if you had the opportunity?
I'd say not, because the opportunity would not have been available. I was never discriminated against as being a woman. In fact, Judge Bradley would always take me before everybody else in the motion hour. The women went first. That's what he thought, and that's what he did. But there's so many things, as I say, the whole community has changed so dramatically, it's almost impossible to say.
What are some of the biggest challenges facing the legal profession today? Are they similar to what you faced, or do you think it depends on the times, or what would you see are the biggest challenges facing the legal profession?
Well, I think, and I don't know how, I don't know whether this is what you have in mind, I think the lawyers are not held in as high repute as they were, and I regret that, because usually if, when we first started, they were viewed by the community much higher than they are now. I don't, also, at that time, when they had a trial in the courthouse, people would come and sit and listen. And I don't think you have that. You have the participants and possibly their family, but you don't have a community audience for a courtroom trial. And I'm not sure that, I'm not sure if it's better or worse.
Are there any stories you'd like to share, or any memories that you have of your years, your 64 years here in Lexington as an attorney?
Well, most of the things that I'm aware of are more general and community-wise. In the summer, when we first started, they didn't have motion hour well, we used to have it every week, but they didn't have it every week. And in the summer, they had a couple of months they didn't have the motion hour, and they started back in September. And at that time, we just had one judge, Judge Adams, and he always made a social out of it. He would bring cigars for the men and ice cream bars for the women. It was so different that I can't really relate it, since I'm not in it now as much as I was then. And then also the possibility, we were so close to run across the street and we'd see the judges in the hall and things of that nature. And I suppose because of the size of the legal community also was a big factor.
Well, that's pretty much all of our questions. Unless you have anything you'd like to add, we're happy to hear
I have
about
nothing that I think would be very interesting. A lot of things have happened, a lot of cases that you are... my husband, when he first started, was appointed to so many cases because there were not many young lawyers here at that time available, and he did quite a bit of trial work at that time, and had some very interesting and what I would consider famous trials. But I personally was not involved in that, except just because he was.
Well, it sounds like, though, you had a lot of experience with a lot of changes in the laws with all the areas that you covered, because, like you pointed out, there have been a lot of changes.
Well, that's the biggest factor, I think. And see, we didn't have computers, and I think about as many tax returns as I've done manually. I couldn't do them without the computer now. It's just a situation that would be impossible, I think, to do. I wouldn't like to try either. And it's getting to be the electronic filing and things like that are so just foreign to me. I can't see how exactly this works. And computers and scanners and internet and all of that was simply not, I don't think, even heard of at that time. They might have been, but they certainly weren't in existence.
You see. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to meet with us. This has been fascinating.
I'm not glad to do it, but I
well, I appreciate it.
But I'm not too upset about it.
Well, it's so hard to talk to a camera, I know, and I appreciate you taking the time and doing that for us. This has been great.
It's nice to meet you again. I haven't seen her for a long time, but I send her checks all the time.
Back on the video.
Okay. You were not the first female lawyer here in Lexington, but you were probably one of the first that was actually a practicing attorney. Is that correct?
Yes. I'm not sure. This is very hard to document. They just weren't here at that time. They might have been, several years before me. But these women who were here were employed in other capacities.
Okay. Do you remember any of the other women attorneys that you were aware of in Lexington? I think you mentioned.
Well, as I told you, Dorothy Salmon was the law school librarian, and Chloe Gifford worked for the university, and I'm not sure of her title. Mildred Robards worked for the university, and then for the Veterans Administration here, and then finally in Washington with the Social Security Administration. Trying to think, I can't think of any others who were here. Mrs. Lee. People always referred to Mrs. Lee, but I never met her and never knew even her husband. So she had to have been several years before me. She, I think, was still living at the time, but both she and her husband were no longer practicing.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Especially now when you see how many women are attorneys.
It's amazing. I think about my granddaughter's in law school, and I think I read some statistic about 40% of them are women now. It's close to 50. It's unheard of, really. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah.
I think we'll let you off the hot seat now.
Yeah, let me off.